Isekai, oh Isekai. Is there any genre that disunites the anime community more than you? Between people who watch every single one of your offsprings and people who would never dare to touch you. It seems like everyone has their very own stance when it comes to watching Isekai. Personally, I have to confess, I'm not a big Isekai guy. But honestly, I don't feel like that's entirely my fault. Because at least from a surface level, Isekai seems like the most repetitive form of media out there. You don't always need a revolutionary plot to make things interesting, and I will get to that later. But for me, big reason why I'm so turned off by it is because it just sounds so much alike. Funny story, there was this one Isekai I wanted to watch a few weeks back, but I forgot to put it in my watch list. The only thing I vaguely remembered was the plot synopsis. And to this day I don't know which anime I actually plan to watch. You know why? It's not because I can't find an anime that fits my description. It's the opposite. Hell, yesterday alone I felt like I already found around 10 shows who sound completely like what I was looking for. Because 90% of Isekai look the same, sound the same, and it feels like I'm just being presented the same story over and over again. So yes, I'm blaming the anime industry and not myself for not watching a lot of Isekai. Because it feels like these kind of stories are not really putting in any effort to spark my interest in the first place. Okay, sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Anyway, so how does any of this translate to today's anime in question? Well, Mushoku Tensei is a story about this loser who gets sent into another world by getting hit by a truck and... Come on, it's an isekai, I don't need to explain the premise, do I? But you know what? Mushoku Tensei is a show that takes its isekai aspect very seriously. You know, the aspect of being transported into another world. It feels like the show genuinely wants you to get to know the world and the characters. It doesn't feel like they're only introduced to be used as a canvas for battling or whatever. Rather, the process of exploring this world is a crucial part of the watching experience itself. For example, seeing our main character slowly exploring his magical abilities. Look, I know it's kind of going for low-hanging fruit, but let's compare the amount of effort Mushoku Tensei puts into this learning process in comparison to everyone's favorite anime, Sword Art Online. Kirito gets beamed into this new world and almost instantly becomes the MVP. The reason given? Well, because you know he was a beta tester. Which is complete BS. The reason why Kirito is so strong is not because he was a beta tester, but because the author didn't care about actually making him adapt to his surroundings. But to be fair, Mushoku Tensei's main character isn't completely without his advantages as well. However, the show is extremely good at making him strong without ever making him come across as overpowered. Having a strong main character isn't a problem. But having an overpowered protagonist can very easily push the writer into a corner, where it becomes a near impossible task to actually keep the tension and stakes high. Not to mention that his supreme talent, you know, actually makes sense. This dude has over 30 years of life experience on his belt. Of course he will be able to use that to his advantage. Furthermore, he used his early years of his childhood to train every single day, where other kids his age were probably still busy with pooping their pants. His powers and skills are a logical consequence of previously elaborated story elements. That's why it doesn't come across as an asshole. If I had to describe Mushoku Tensei in one word, it would be nuanced. There is a certain unpredictability towards the world and characters that, at least in my case, surprised, sometimes even downright shocked me. An example would be Paul, our main character's father. In the first episode or so, I thought that I already completely knew what kind of character he is and what kind of role he would play in the story. Then a few episodes later, he does some things that completely changed my perception of him. And I was like, okay, so now I understand what kind of guy he is. But then season 2 comes around and suddenly he gets an actual character arc and my expectations prove to be false once again. And that's what I mean when I say nuanced. Characters do things you don't expect them to do, and they end up in places where you didn't see them going. And that's how I found myself constantly longing to get to know them more. Mushoku Tensei is really one of the few shows that I can confidently call a journey. Apart from what I've already mentioned, there are so many small little things I like about the show. It's like when you go on a vacation with various people and at the end ask them what they enjoyed about the trip the most. The answers will usually vary greatly. And that is how I feel about Mushoku Tensei. Because while there are some reoccurring themes, ultimately I think you can enjoy the show for so many different reasons that almost anyone will find something they appreciate about this anime, isekai fan or not. But for the moment, let's take a step back and look at the premise once more. Although the plot is certainly interesting and kinda deviates from the norm, I would hardly call it groundbreaking. Let's look at Attack on Titan for a second. The basic plot of Attack on Titan is seriously just really good. Like, even people who are not fans of the show will have to admit that the plot is just genius. The basic Season 1 plot, by the way. Of course, Attack on Titan's story is known for changing its direction faster than a Formula 1 car in the World Finals. But I mean the basic premise. It's just really creative, yet easy to understand. Which is undoubtedly one of the reasons why the show was able to draw so many people to it in the first place. But honestly, you don't need that necessarily. You know when people say that Evangelion is a deconstruction of the mecha genre, or Hunter x Hunter is a deconstruction of the shonen genre? Well, I think Mushoku Tensei is not that. I would argue that Mushoku Tensei is not a deconstruction of Isekai, but rather a reconstruction of it. Because while yes, Mushoku Tensei does deviate from the norm, this is still very much an Isekai. Main character is a loser, gets hit by a truck, lowlies, magic, even Isekai in the title. This is an Isekai, no matter how you look at it. But that made me realize something. It made me realize why the Isekai genre became so insanely popular in the first place. Mushoku Tensei showed me that you can still, even after all these years, do a lot with the genre. That you can use the seemingly most worn out premise and still make a good story out of it. Because at the end of the day, it's all a matter of execution. You know what, Isekai? Maybe I treated you too harshly. And maybe, just maybe, I might give you another chance in the future. But until then, thanks for watching this video and goodbye.